Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar T8. Hey, pretty milquetoast question here, but did you ever have any pets? Always wanted a seizure dog or something. but they kept losing my paperwork in the mail, so it never happened. No, that's a fine question. I can't believe we haven't talked about that yet. Seems like a pretty easy first date stuff. To be fair, our first date was pretty chaotic. Not a lot of time for chit-chat and appetizers, really. But we talked for like an hour while we were dancing and stuff. Wait, are you counting that time we went into the underworld by ourselves? The night we both ate shit completely and almost freaking died? Come on, Vi. You know that doesn't count. We went to bed together afterwards and started holding hands the next day. That makes it a date by default, Oliver. Her voice is surprisingly stern as she says that last part. I guess so. But yeah, we had a dog and a cat for most of the time I lived at home. The dog was this big, American boxer named Rocky. Like the super buff guy in the movies? That's actually hilarious. And he came up with the name, and I guess it kinda stuck. Imagine being named something so silly, though. Your entire existence would constantly be orbiting around something as lame as a dad joke. It'd be humiliating. I can think of worse things to base your existence around. At least he wasn't named after a dictator or something, right? What about the cat? What was their name? Good Cat. Her name was Good Cat. See? That's way worse. At least Rocky sounds like an actual name. I was 6. You must have been, because that's the worst name for a pet I've ever heard. It's adorable, though, and definitely tells me that you were a good kid growing up. Terrible kids don't name their pets something that cute. Nah, Violet, I was vicious, a total monster. You don't even know. Sure you were, Olive Oil. So if you named her Good Cat when you were 6, then she probably died when you were around 17, right? That's pretty recent. Jesus, Vi. What? I mean, that's a pretty grim thing to ask somebody. It is? Oh, my mistake. Anyways, continue. Okay. Good Cat actually got killed by Rocky when I was 15. Oh. It's weird, though. They were always super friendly toward each other. Like, they'd curl up into little balls and sleep on the couch together, stuff like that. They'd eat at the exact same time every day, even when we put their food out separately. Oh, and sometimes when Rocky wasn't paying attention, a Good Cat would get super pissed and start whacking at his tail. That's precious. Honestly, they were totally inseparable. And then out of nowhere, Rocky just starts chasing her across the yard one day. It was like he was possessed. I had never seen him move that violently before. None of us were really quick enough to stop him, and after he caught up to Good Cat, hey, if you don't want to talk about it anymore, it's fine. No, I'm good. It's just been out of my head for a bit, because this next part is what I have the most trouble making sense of. As soon as Rocky caught up to Good Cat and bit down, he immediately let her go. He didn't do that thing other predators do in nature documentaries, where they shake the body around and stuff. He just felt what was in his mouth and let go. And then he started whimpering, licking Good Cat's body with his tail between his legs. Olive? That's horrible. So it's almost like he knew he did something wrong. No, I think it was more like he didn't know what he was doing in the first place until it was too late. Judy says he confused Good Cat for Raccoon, and that's why he attacked her. But that's just Judy being Judy. She didn't see what I saw. When Rocky was chasing Good Cat, it wasn't just instinct. Rocky was certain he was doing the right thing. He wasn't moving like he wanted to kill a raccoon. He was moving like his friend was in danger from something none of us could see. An invisible threat. A malevolent, horrid force that would swallow her brain and leave her body broken. But he ended up getting too close and biting down on the wrong thing. Even if it was only for a split second, it doesn't matter. That's all it takes. And so he ended up killing the very thing he was trying so hard to protect. Are you sure it was something that deliberate? Maybe Judy is right. Maybe something was wrong with his perception in the moment, and that's why things happened the way they did. But then how the hell are you even supposed to know if there's something up your perception in the first place? Violet shrugs. It sucks, but I guess you gotta get lucky and realize something's wrong before it's too late. Or, if you're really lucky, you have a friend help you see things in a way you normally wouldn't. Maybe that's what Good Cat was for Rocky. Maybe that was something she talked with him about in their cute little pet language. Now you're just projecting. And you're not. Olive, I know it can be comforting having something to blame. But when you look at what happened, doesn't all this seem like nothing more than a simple accident? But that just seems so meaningless. It isn't meaningless unless you want it to be, love. Just because there's no one to blame doesn't make it meaningless. Only you get to decide what experiences and details are meaningful to you. Those details and experiences might not be correct or whatever, but it doesn't mean that they're useless. Alright, so what do you make of it then? What meaning is there in any of this for you? Well, your dog's name was Rocky and your cat's name was Good Cat. So that means they were cute, obviously, objectively cute. And by extension, so are you. That's what that means. I don't think objective cute is something that actually exists. Vi, how lonely it must be to deny your own existence flippantly. Goober. Broodmeister. Have you ever done anything illegal, Oliver? Are there laws about going into the subconscious realm without a permit? Unlikely. Then I think I'm good. Oh, no, wait, there's actually was something. I egged a cop car once. You did what? Alright, we didn't exactly egg it. Remember that week back in July when Ash's dad was out of town? Turns out he went by train, which means the convertible was left at home. So later that night, Ash picked up Emil and I down on Flagler. Wait, I remember that. Didn't you say the three of you were going into town to get food? That's what I thought we were doing too. I was positive he was going to take us out to Steak or Shake, or something like that. But as soon as we left, Ash demanded that three of us use this chance to engage in some debauchery. Debauchery? Did you touch butts? Was the cop car you referred to Ashton's booty? Did you egg Ashton's booty, Oliver? I could just stop talking now and it wouldn't bother me in the slightest, you know? Fine. So what did you three end up doing then? I don't think Ash had too much of a plan going in. If anything, I think he was mostly trying to get Emil to loosen up a bit. Why do you think that? Because Ash let him make all the really important decisions, namely, whatever we were going to use to leave our mark on the town. After driving around for a little, Emil decided it was best to get our stuff at the dollar store. Saves us the most money, after all. That guy's way too practical sometimes. Ash was all about it, though. Honestly, I think he was pretty stoked with Emil was humoring him at all. They didn't have any eggs, though, so we ended up getting... I immediately start giggling to myself. Oliver? Sorry. It's just... Emil bought dish soap, chunky peanut butter, and tortillas. He bought $20 worth of the stuff. Good lord, why? I don't know. Pretty sure he didn't really know what he was doing either. Again, though, Ash was all about it. He kept going on about how we'd be able to make some really creative shit with this stuff. But in the end, all we did was slap a bunch of peanut butter caked tortillas on some stop signs. We'd jump out, slap one on, then Ash would drive away from the scene like we just robbed a bank. And the dish soap? Oh. We found an empty cop car parked by the beach and covered all the door handles with that stuff. This has got to be the lamest crime story I've ever heard. Damn it, I expected way more from Ashton than rubbing soap on an empty cop car. Did you guys get some sponges and wash it down afterwards? Did Emil smack your butt with a wet towel? What is with you today, Vi? I don't actually know, to be completely honest. For a second, Violet looks legitimately distressed. Well, it doesn't matter how lame it was. It was still fun just driving around town, acting like we were doing something dangerous. And we actually did end up getting some burgers afterwards, so that was cool. Why would you get fast food when you had perfectly good tortillas to munch on? Because we're rebels, Violet, and rebels do as they please. My, how wasteful, how dangerous. Oh, take me now, you sinful man. Violet is clearly enjoying herself with this one, but I sadly can't think of a creative way to follow up her theatrics. What about you, though? How does your sheet look? Public indecency, mostly. Okay, what? I was doing yoga on the beach before you got here. Naked, of course. Other than that, I think I stole a balloon once. They might have been free that day, though. I can't remember. I do know that again, you'll have to go through the playlist that this is in. But I know when I was playing the alpha version of this game, which I didn't play all the way through, I made jokes like every time. There's so many references, like Futurama, and of course this SpongeBob reference here. I enjoy the references. I don't know if the developers of this game will ever encounter my playthroughs of this game, let alone have the patience or desire to look through the disorganized mess of a playlist that I have in regards to this game. But I appreciate that they made the game. She's probably just poking fun at me some more. Probably. I think this is one mystery I'm fine leaving unsolved, though. I've been thinking about Andy a lot lately. She's pretty hard not to think about. Every time I'm in pain, there's a part of me still kind of blames her for it. Even at something as mundane as stubbing my toe, I still have this weird impulse to chew her out for it. I think we all kind of feel that way. It must be quite the burden to take on everybody's ire like that and not let it slow you down. Do you think it ever got to her? Maybe. I'm not sure I've ever met anyone less worried about being liked than Andy. We're lucky for that, then. If she was anything like her sister, we probably would have all died a long time ago. That seems a little extreme. But what's so bad about Judy? No, I adore Judith. It's just Andy forced us to get stronger, even if at the risk of her being despised. Just look at Emil. The guy was made of glass bones and paper skin back in junior year. Now he's all scarred for life and bitter. He went to her for help, though. Doesn't mean he's not scarred. I just respect that she allowed herself to push us all as hard as she did. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm so used to being coddled all the time. But we know Judith, she would never put herself in a position like that. I can't deny that Judith was always great at keeping everybody's morale high, but Andy really made us eat our spinach. With the exception of maybe Emil, the rest of us were pretty average physically going into all this. And Andy probably knew that if we stayed that way, there'd be no chance of us surviving in the underworld. That's probably why she was yelling melodramatic stuff like, "Do you want to die back there?" whenever we'd fail a push-up or something. I really used to hate her for that. I wanted to shout back at her to tell her that she was being arrogant and lording her strength over the rest of us. But looking back, I bet Andy knew from the start how dangerous all this was, and that's why she pushed us so hard. Being that strict can't be that easy thing to do consistently. It might have been easy for her, though. Some people really aren't bothered by stuff like that. They're tough enough to handle being disliked, as long as it's not for nothing. Isn't that how it is for you? The fact that we're all still alive, maybe, might be more than enough to keep her happy. How do you think she would have handled it if Ashton actually lost his hand then? I'm not sure. I'm almost certain she would have cried. No way, I can't even picture something like that. She would have, though. If Andy had the best grasp of how dangerous all this shit was, then she probably would have suffered the most if something irreversible happened to us. She would have definitely felt responsible. She probably still feels responsible for us in some way. I wish I'd thanked her more for all she had done before I had to leave. How do you even think a person like Andy without being poked fun at? It's not like you can buy her chocolates. She'd probably slap them out of your hand for saying they're too fatty or something. It's really sad that you think that way about her, Oliver. Why? Because if that's really how the world views her, then it means she'll probably never be thanked properly for anything in her life. She'll always just continue being this untouchable goddess of a woman. That sounds like a lonely fate, don't you think? You're not a very competitive person, right? I've never been a fan of competition, no. I can't really think of many good reasons to waste time trying to prove myself. Why do you ask? Because you never take up any Emil's challenges whenever he throws one out there for us. You always seem weirdly disinterested in them, despite how adamant he is to have us compete. Even Judith got all heated during the bake-off he hosted, and you're the only one of us that didn't enter the chess tournament back in June. You're not an idiot, Vi. You could have easily made it to the finals, and he was throwing down some serious cash. So, how come you never participated in all that stuff he set up for us? It's like I said, there never was a good reason to. If Emma wants to view himself as the most intelligent, skilled out of the six of us, then that's his prerogative. Even if a little humility might benefit him in the long run, it's not my responsibility to challenge the goals he has. I'm satisfied enough with keeping things simple. You're starting to sound like a wet blanket. You weren't the least bit curious to see how you'd stack up against him? Nope. I don't believe you. Olive, even if I beat Emma at some stupid game, there's always going to be a bigger fish. There's always going to be people with better focus, greater intelligence, and more devotion to their craft, whatever. So why would I lock up all my self-worth behind something that's almost completely out of my control in the first place? I love Emma to bits, but I don't understand the appeal of trying to subdue something that massive. It's like trying to capture a big white whale inside a tiny glass jar, but it's because the task is so daunting that it's even appealing in the first place. I think Emma was wise enough to know that there's always going to be someone better than him, but that's why he keeps pushing himself. I may not approve of everything he does, but Emma wants to be the best. Then I think that's admirable. Well, I think it's dangerous. It's obvious just talking with him that his fixation with subduing the impossible has bled in every aspect of his life. Could you imagine what a string of losses would do to someone that infatuated with winning? So why even care about winning in the first places? Why care about competition? If someone can feel satisfied with themselves creating something instead, then why not just spend your time doing that? Probably because it's not as fun, Violet. It's thrilling to see how personalities clash to a locked battle, you can't deny it. How, whenever Emil faces off against someone, you're right there watching with the rest of us. I'll say this in general, the society of the world rewards competition. At the end of the day, usually people are judged by their ability to be better than other people. Heck, throughout most of history, if you weren't sufficiently greedy enough or violent enough, you would just die. At the end of the day, being greedy and violent was the only way for people to survive in the past. Nowadays, you can at least stay alive without being greedy or violent, but it seems like everybody looks down on you for it and calls you worthless and a failure. They say that stuff like that doesn't matter, but they still wind up insulting you, looking down on you, threatening you, even calling you horrible things for lacking that greed and violence. But, well, it does make you feel a bit sad to be, one, talked down to, or two, well, some people, especially in my younger years, have said some very insane things to me. And I did not appreciate that. But at the end of the day, even if the whole world were to hate me and tell me I'm worthless, I'm just gonna be myself. My same silly, awkward, pacifist self. Heck, when it comes to money, I mainly just care about, do I have enough money to pay rent? And when it comes to violence, I've only ever hurt anyone in self-defense. I enjoy anime and video games that are violent, but I have no desire for that stuff in real life. And unless there's a situation forcing me to be stuck around somebody who's aggressive, if I'm around somebody who's fighting and yelling, I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. I don't want to be around any of that. I don't see a point in it, and it just, generally, I hate it. So even if everyone looks down on me for it, I'm just not gonna have anything to do with any of that stuff. Everyone criticizes me, says I'm too mellow. Tells me I'm worthless. Oh well. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Even if no one else understands, I'll just be myself. There's a drama to true competition that creative endeavors alone can never capture. Centering your life around that drama sounds exhausting, though. If there's constant pressure to defeat the next person ahead of you, then when do you rest? When do you have time to create or exercise or form any sort of meaningful relationship? I think that's a big part of the challenge, but I'm sure it's possible. I'm not too worried about Emil. None of that stuff you talked about seems like much of an issue, as long as you're okay with losing. Is Emil a good loser, Olive? Yeah. He always shakes my hand and smiles afterwards, so probably. Are those gestures all it really takes, though? What else is there? Forgiveness, mostly? I don't know. I just hope he can forgive himself for losing when it happens. Otherwise, he's going to be chasing that whale of his for quite some time. How often do you stay up late, Oliver? Huh? Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and go to pee or something, and you'll still be working on stuff in the living room. You're always back in bed by morning, but we never actually fell asleep together this summer. I was even that before we started getting serious too. Whenever I went to the kitchen, you were pretty much always still awake. Is that bad? It's just something interesting I noticed while we were living together. Any reason as to why you're such a night owl, Olive? This shouldn't be too hard for me to answer, but I still don't want her to get the wrong idea. I'm probably going to sound like a sociopath for saying this, but night is probably the only time when nobody expects anything from me. Even if they aren't necessarily asleep, people just kind of leave you alone at night. Like those times when you go to the bathroom, for example. You would look over at me, but you never actually said anything while I was working. Of course, you were burning the motor oil. I could see that you were busy. Exactly. You were probably thinking something like, oh well, if he's staying late, he must be doing something important. But I was never working on anything that actually mattered, not really. I only wanted some time to recharge. I know I've said it before, but I constantly feel like I'm playing games where I'm playing as myself. Because people really don't leave me alone during the day. When the sun is up, it's like everybody I know wants a piece of me. It's exhausting, it makes me feel like a commodity. Like I'm nothing more than a spice that people add to their otherwise bland day. But late at night, the only thing that most people are hungry for is sleep. The dawn is my enemy. So I can finally be alone with my thoughts. That's probably selfish of me, but things are just so quiet at night. It's the only time I'm able to think straight. That's probably why we never really went to bed together much. I know that makes me a shitty boyfriend, but I didn't want you to think that my bad habits had anything to do with you. It's more of a people in general kind of sense issue, I guess. Don't worry, I'm not that self-conscious. I had a feeling it was something like that, considering how everybody we know kind of places you in the center of their lives without a second thought. So, what do you think about that then? What keeps you up at night, Oliver? It really depends. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's a conversation I had with someone earlier in the day. But on amazing nights is nothing at all. No static on the brain, no obligations. Just a liberating, invincible silence. Do you ever think we were given a bit too much freedom here? You and I had the entire house to ourselves all summer, and Andy and Judith were basically allowed to do whatever they wanted. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had this much autonomy before. Even last summer we all still had to be back home by 10. The only real exception were those work sessions we had at Judy's house back in April. Normally, if I ever wanted to go anywhere big, I had to plan it out like 3 weeks ahead of time with my folks. But this time, I don't know. It's like we could disappear for hours in the middle of the night and nobody would even notice. It's bizarre, right? There's no way any of us could have gotten away with all this nonsense otherwise. It only took 3 days of being unsupervised before we all decided to be big dumb heroes. And now everyone's brains are fried. Kind of makes me wish we had more of a curfew. Wait, really? No, but you get my point. If even one person caught onto the crap the 6 of us were doing, that might have been enough to break our little echo chamber. Huh. Yeah, you might be right about that. All it would have taken was Ash's dad being like, "Hey son, where have you been?" Or someone seeing us going into locker. And that probably would have been it. We got really lucky, didn't we? I think that mostly depends on your definition of lucky. If anything, I'd say this whole situation seems super contrived. Even some of the stuff we did in the underworld seems way too convenient. Like how lucky we actually were to land in the ribcage every time we crossed over the ribcage. That's your idea of lucky? That place was creepy as hell, but it was safe. Can you imagine if we had to start at, well, anywhere else? We would have been eaten alive. But we all just happened to jump out into the only region of the underworld without any real threats. Now why do you think that is? Can't really blame anything other than luck, I suppose. Right. Tell me, Oliver, if you were to be thrown headfirst into a dangerous adventure, would what we experience not be the ideal form of progression? You have a cozy little beach town, where all your needs are met, complete freedom to get yourself into as much trouble as you want as possible, and plenty of weak monsters to kill until you get stronger. As cool as we all are, the truth is a lot of would-be problems were solved immediately by the context of our situation alone. Are you saying that somebody might have set all of this up? No. I'm only asking if you can imagine a more ideal set of circumstances. Is there anything you could have possibly changed to make things easier on us in the beginning? I think for a second or two. We could have been dating from the beginning. That's something. Oh please, that doesn't count. Yes it does. My morale would have been higher. We wouldn't have gotten beat up as much. I'm pretty sure that's not how it works. Of course it is. The depth of your bond determines everything. Yes, it's a Persona reference. It's the Persona video games. Why do you think I spent so much time hanging out with Emma on Wednesdays? Because that's when you two had your little book club? Exactly. What the hell does reading books have to do with fighting sirens? Well, knowledge is power, right? Okay, fine, I just wanted to make out with you a little bit more. But don't act like that wouldn't have helped. Whatever you say, darling. You're pretty tired after all this stuff, aren't you? Now that our little escapade here is finally over, I mean. I've been nothing but tired. How about you? Are your muscles starting to hurt yet? I didn't notice as much as we were going to Underworld every night, but now it hurts to even sneeze. It hurts to sneeze, so it's your abs mostly. No, it's pretty much everywhere. I remember hurting for a little bit when Andy started training us, but now my entire body feels like it's been put through a blender. It's probably because you have nothing else to focus on. Now that we aren't in life and death situations constantly, there's not as much adrenaline in our system. So it's kind of hard to distract ourselves from how sore everything is. Honestly, we should have just celebrated by going to a sauna and getting massages instead of having like 3 different pizza parties. I doubt we could have got anything like that off the ground. Judith alone would have hated going somewhere like a sauna, and it wouldn't have been fun enough for everyone else. You think so? I bet she would have been thrilled to be in a hot, steamy room with you. She'd be like, "Don't look at me, Oliver. I'm all sweaty. It's embarrassing." Violet giggles for a little bit as I bury my feet into the cold sand. Hey, why the long face? You said gain 1500. You said I'm poking fun at your crush. I don't have a crush on Judith. Come on. We're all adults here, you don't have to be shy about it. Isn't the cute motherly childhood friend kind of your type? Violet. Regardless, it's pretty obvious that she's absolutely enamored with you. The endless cornucopia of baked goods, the gaudy swimsuits, the excessive number of pool parties. Can we please stop talking about this, Vi? Don't you think it's a little weird how giddy you are about setting me up with someone else? I know that you and I gotta break up at the end of the summer, but this shit is still really, really uncomfortable. I feel Violet's arms wrapped around my back, hugging my torso. Why does it make you uncomfortable? We had a good run, didn't we? I talked about this and how I felt about this much more in depth in the alpha version of the game. Like I said, we'll eventually get to a part where the game will be blind again. But I've already talked about this scenario in depth. Lines like that just go show how bad you are at comforting people. I'll just go ahead and ignore that one, I guess. Oliver, I know you like how cozy she makes you feel, how much she pampers you. And I know that she's been biding her time, waiting for this day like it was Christmas. So who am I to make you swim against the tide? There's always going to be other people in your life, Oliver. It was never going to be just me. Sure, maybe there was a way for you to leave Siren's Call without having to say goodbye to everybody, but that's somehow possible. But at the very least, you need to be at peace with letting me go, okay? I still don't understand. Understand what? Why doesn't any of this bother you? Why are you so okay with it? Because I need to be. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt, but it hurts the same way the back of your tongue feels after you eat broccoli for the first time. It's just reality. You chase down the shitty taste with some water and move on. I know I've already forced us to talk about this way more than you probably wanted to, and I'm sorry about that. I'll say this. Obviously, there is more going on in this game than meets the eye. And I still haven't gotten to the part of the game that, the other shoe drops. And when it comes to the relationship dynamics between Oliver and Violet here and my own personal feelings about things, like I said, I addressed that very thoroughly in another video that's in this playlist. That being said, one thing I didn't mention, and this has got to have some context, this game is supposed to eventually get very dark, like Doki Doki Literature Club. I haven't gotten that far in the game, but I will say this. Given the very intro of this game, I think it is very possible that Violet is dead. And I think it's possible Judith is Siren herself. So I think it's quite possible that Ashton got seriously hurt, that Emil has some issues, that Andy probably had a full-on mental breakdown and may wind up in a mental asylum at the end of this game, that Judith might have straight up either was a siren or became a siren, or has become psychotic yandere. And I think Violet died, and her spirit is just sort of here as we're sort of maybe the underworld merged with the overworld and stuff. Also, there's some context given the fact that the first foray I had into this game series, aside from, like I said, I eventually did play the alpha version of this game, but there was actually a prequel to this game made shortly before the full version came out, called Sunflower Pie. And that prequel was my first introduction to this world. I hadn't played any of the Siren's Call games at all. And I was in that game completely blind. And I'll say that game definitely adds a bit of context, especially when you play that first. I don't know what order the developers of this game would intend or want people to play it in. But I'm content with my own unique way of doing it. But I'm fine being hated as long as it helps you guys get to where you need to be. Do you really think I could ever end up hating you, Vi? I'm not talking about you hating me, Oliver. I'm talking about being hated. Huh? Never mind. Let's just enjoy our time together while we can, alright? And then after that, remember that you're free to do whatever you like. Within reason, of course. Okay. So your mom's finally coming home tonight. You excited? What? No, she's not. Why would you think that? Pretty sure not even my funeral would be enough to get her to fly back down here. Wait, she's not coming back? No. Why would she? Last I checked, she seemed pretty content, just blazing it up with Dad up in Denver. Can't imagine her abandoning such a cushy lifestyle. Blazing. Wait, so you're absolutely certain she's not flying down? Who's driving me to Orlando then? How am I going to get to the airport? Orlando? Oh, that's what you're getting at. Olive, my parents have been living in Colorado ever since I started having seizures. Miss Lawrence isn't my mom. She's my aunt. Real mom didn't want Spring for any of my medicine, so she ended up kicking me over to her sister. I'm sorry, what? Come on, you have to at least remember that, right? No? What the hell? But Miss Lawrence straight up calls herself Mom whenever I talk to her. Golly, hun, you sure do take stuff literally sometimes, don't you? Why wouldn't I? It seems like a weird thing for someone to lie about. It's barely even a lie, though. She basically is my mom at this point. She pays for the food, gives me somewhere to sleep, and, sure enough, covers all my copays. She may be a failure in every other aspect of life, but she did a decent enough job worrying about me. And that's way more than I can say about those 2 fried potatoes of mine up north. A failure. She failed her chemistry thesis back in college, got wrapped up in a bunch of pseudoscience with her dumbass friends, and ended up basing her senior project on something, well, baseless. So she did what any good student does and immediately panic switched her major to education or something. Shocking stuff, I'm sure. So Miss Lawrence actually wanted to be a chemist or something? Chemist is a generous way to put it, but sure. Low-level Florida witch might be a more accurate title at this point. Damn, Vi, a witch? You're being kind of hard on her, don't you think? No. Oh? No, she's definitely a witch. She could barely go a day without pressuring me into testing out one of her concoctions. You know that pressure all too well yourself, right? The gentle, maddening pressure of someone trying to fix you. Again, sunflower pie. God. She was so embarrassing whenever we were at the neurologist's office. But doctor, I read online that small doses of X and Y can help the synapses. As long as you drink a thimble's worth of Z before you go to sleep, that is. Your aunt tried to drug you. Let's just say there's lots of reasons why I'm plenty happy cooking my own food. You're messing with me, right? Oliver, honey, I was a walking fog machine throughout most of high school, remember? My actual prescriptions were already bad enough. Dumping any extra crap in my system would have been insane. But self-righteous heroes like her are always a little insane to some degree. You kinda have to be. Violet, why have we never talked about this? We have, Olive, many times. You used to write little poems for me about this stuff for me back when we were seniors. You even collated all of them into an anthology for my birthday. It was truly a vindicating read. And a lovely gift. Look, I know you probably don't remember any of this stuff, but that's perfectly fine, Olive. It's likely nothing more than another stupid side effect. Did you ever fake being sick to get out of school? There were some days I wanted to, mostly so I could work on my art and stuff, but I never followed through with it. Nah, I was never good enough to fake being sick. So if I ever wanted to stay home, I just made myself sick the night before. Oh wow. You're nothing if not devoted, I suppose. How does that even work? Would you eat expired food or something? No, it was never anything that gross. If I needed to be sick, I'd just focus on how pleasant it feels to be alive. If my skin was clammy, I'd make myself think about that. If the lights are too bright, I'd focus on that too. Essentially, I would try and replicate the headspace of a sick person until I actually became sick. And that worked. It did for me, at least. I don't know how it goes for everyone else. I've come to find stuff like this, that is one of the more positive aspects of negative thinking. I may be bad at lying to other people, but I'm very good at lying to myself. And sometimes, that kind of mentality is powerful enough to shape reality. I was so good at thinking this way that I could basically keep myself sick for as long as I wanted. And they would always be authentic. That's not healthy, Oliver. I mean, sure, but neither is sitting still under a bunch of fluorescent lights for 6 hours a day, 5 days. It's usually more like 8 hours in school, but hey. You should know more when those places aren't designed for people like us. Hell, I'd even go so far as to say they aren't designed for people at all. What's so bad about using parts of myself that are unhealthy to escape from an unhealthy situation every once in a while? It just seems like you're delaying the inevitable. But I never did unless it was absolutely necessary. It's not like the school has any way of knowing I'm really at my limit. And it's not like I was doing drugs or breaking shit. I was just hanging out in my room for a day or two, breathing. If the system clearly wasn't designed for people like me in the first place, then why should I feel guilty about employing a way to escape it? Hey, you do you. Honestly, if you actually needed to take a day off, then I don't see any real harm in it. But it seems like the kind of situation where it could end up becoming really easy to confuse your needs with your wants. Well, I think it's kind of a cool skill to have. You're probably just jealous. Not even remotely. You're painting the siren that attacked Ashton, right? The one that was protecting the seed? That's the one. I still haven't really gotten the damn thing out of my head, unfortunately. So I'm doing best to try to evict it. Any chance I can have an insider's look before it's done? No chance. Early opinions throw me off too much. Makes the painting less honest and such. Well, given your previous work, I imagine the piece is a very Bacon-esque so far. Bacon? Like Francis Bacon? That's an interesting take. I didn't know you were familiar with his work. Who? No, I mean your paintings end up look like they're kind of crunchy. Wait, there's a guy whose last name is Bacon. Yes, he drew a lot of body horror stuff. Disfigured faces, cuts of hanging meat, things like that. Hold on. So he drew pictures of meat and his last name was Bacon. That's freaking incredible. Come on, Oliver. No, shut up, that's amazing. You can't deny it. That would be like if I made olive oil for a living and you sold flowers. Wouldn't it be more like if I painted flowers? The guy wasn't a butcher, he was an artist. In this line of work, you're bound to paint some meat eventually. It's not that weird. Hentai! You're bound to paint some meat eventually, huh? Yes, penises. I get it. Ha 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 ha. Although I must admit, it's a shame I never got you to ever pose for me. I can feel the inside of my mouth begin to dry up as she says this. Wait, do you mean like naked? Like pose for you naked? Of course. It's not like there weren't plenty of opportunities. It's always a shame it never crossed my mind. I would have loved to have something like that to remember you by. There's no way I'd ever be okay with letting you paint me naked. What if somebody wanted to see it? So what, naked people appear all the time in art. It's nothing to be ashamed of. No way, no. You haven't turned out to be the greatest painting on earth. I'd never want to be the center of attention like that. You could have fooled me, hero. Reluctant hero. Yeah, I bet. Such a shame we could have saved the art world with the butt of yours. You'd only end up making it look like bacon. So? Delicious? Aren't you a vegetarian? So? Bacon still looks tasty. Okay, fine, I'm lying. You win. I hate sand. Not this again. It's grainy, bumpy, bothersome. And by golly, it just gets everywhere. I'd literally do anything if you just stop talk. So kiss me, Violet. Kiss me of your lips that are in fact not like sand, and thus desirable. I lunge forward, tackling Violet into the soft sand. Oliver? Become one with the sand. It's only after accepting the sand in every orifice of your body that you will finally know peace. Oliver! Why won't you look at me? Why won't you look at me? Why do you deny the truth? I too once was lost. There was confusion, wistfulness, indecision. But now there is only sand, Violet! Sand in my ears, sand in the folds of my brain. Aren't you seduced by this amazing monologue? By this amazing monologue about fucking sand? That last bit barely escapes me before I began laughing hysterically. I don't even know what I'm doing, but it's evoking a positive reaction out of her, so I can't stop. For a while, her and I just end up laying there, reveling in our own absurdity. Thank you, sand. Thank you for this moment. You came to my house without any of your technology, right? Unless you count that old bass guitar of mine as technology, then yeah, I wasn't able to go back and grab much else without risking a run-in with my parents. I might be getting my desktop and stuff like that mailed over to me. After I move into the dorm, though, maybe. How come? I was wondering how you felt after going an entire summer without playing any video games. That was kind of your thing for a while, but you seem to be adapting pretty well without them, all things considered. Nah, things have just been hectic is all. There isn't a day that goes by where I don't miss being able to sit down unbothered and play something evocative. It was just never worth the risk of actually going back home to get all my stuff. You miss it that much? Absolutely. I know my folks are the type of bonehead people to think that video games would be the kind of thing I'd eventually outgrow, as long as I wasn't around them. But that's not how it works. Thinking somebody could outgrow playing video games, it's like thinking you outgrow reading books or listening to music. Yeah, and I talked about this too, like I will always like video games and anime. I don't follow. Maybe it's just because I was never allowed to play them, or whatever, but that sounds like a pretty big leap in logic. Books and video games, how are those things even remotely comparable? It's probably because I was never really much of an adrenaline junkie. I didn't play games to feel powerful or cool, at least not most of the time. And again, what that conversation that we were just talking about, and even the conversation we're going into right now, I talked about in depth in the previous recordings of this video that were like posted like a month or something ago. It's in this playlist. At least not most of the time. Before I even got my first game console, I was a total bookworm. Same. Even when I was little, the main reason I played video games was because they were really good at telling stories. Sure, most of the plots for those couple videos I played were never anything special, but because I was the one in control, even the simplest story was way more engaging than anything I could ever read in a book. I think my parents only really saw video games as something people like me could get addicted to, though. And I guess you can get addicted to anything, technically. But I think that's the reason why you play a video game in the first place, because it really matters. So, whenever somebody hints that I might outgrow them someday, it seems absurd. It's like saying I'll outgrow storytelling. It's not something I can even cognate. What kind of games do you end up playing then, if you don't mind me asking? Violet is clearly skeptical of my argument here, so I take a second or two to collect my thoughts before speaking again. My favorite one wasn't even that fun, if you can believe it. It was about a guy who goes to this vacation town to look for his wife, Silent Hill. Except his wife has been dead for like 3 years or something, and the town is basically a funnel for his guilt. You spend most of the game looking for her, avoiding monsters and stuff. It was kinda clunky, but really haunting and beautiful too. Like a nightmare from your childhood that you end up remembering fondly for some reason. Huh? So you just walk around the town the whole time and try to find your wife? You're right, that doesn't sound very fun. But it really didn't need to be. See? That's exactly what I'm saying. It may not have been very fun, but it was super enjoyable. It was probably the most immersive experience I've ever had consuming media. The world itself pretty much swallowed me whole. Right. Of course it did. So what happened then? How did it end? Where did all the walking and around end up taking you? Aha, see? I gotcha. The fact that you're so curious and find out how it ended only proves my point. If you're that curious about just hearing the game, imagine actually playing it. Someone like you would be completely and totally hooked. That might be true. Good thing I never end up playing any of them then. As engaging as it all sounds, I'm pretty happy with the person I became. Gameless childhood and all. So I don't even need to... what did you say the name of the game was again? That's not gonna work for me, Violet. You're not looking up the game or its ending later. You'll just have to be okay with not knowing. She pouts, her nose twitching in that cute, slightly agitated way. Fine. Living with you has been fun, by the way. If I ever end up having a housemate again in the future, hope they're not as low maintenance as you were. Low maintenance? You really think so? I always felt like such a bother, especially in the beginning. Why? You never gave me any trouble at all. I can't even think of anything you did that was even remotely bothersome. Really? So you're fine with me using up all the hot water every morning? Oh, sure. I take cold showers anyway. What? Oh, you didn't know? No? Why on earth would you torment yourself like that? I just heard that coffee is really expensive if you drink it every day, so I'm trying to find creative ways to wake myself up in the morning. Cold water isn't working so far, so that's why I use it to clean myself off. Oh. I mean, I never helped out too much with the cooking or anything, so that's not exactly ideal. I'm glad you didn't. That's something I really want to get good at before I move out on my own. The more meals you make, the less chances I have to figure out my own cooking style. I refuse to be one of those adults that forced to make themselves sandwiches every day because they don't know how to make anything else. Besides, you always did the dishes anyway, so it's fine. Dishes are easy. You also took out the trash a bunch. Trash is easy too. All you gotta do is drag a bag or two down to the street corner. It's not rocket science. I can't stand easy, or smelly for that matter, so that works out too. Wow, I always thought you were just being polite, but my lifestyle really never bothered you? Nope. No matter what negative image you have of yourself, the reality of it is, everything about having you around just sort of worked out. I don't think living together with someone is ever going to be this comfortable for me again, to be completely honest. There is a noticeable dip in tone in the Violet's voice as she says this last part. So, you feel it too then? How living together was way easier than it should have been? Yes, exactly. It was almost too perfect, right? You think there would have been some sticking point, but there never was. It's a little disconcerting, like being a gift from someone you don't even know. I can't stop thinking about how couples probably stay together forever because of this hypnotic, cozy atmosphere. That feeling of comfort is so powerful, almost like some sort of airborne parasite. I even thought about proposing to you, just because I didn't want to lose it. Wait. Back it up. You were going to propose to me. I might have. I was like halfway to the jewelry store before I realized that I was in some kind of trance. Holy shit. I can't. Wow, that's a lot to process. I mean, I would have definitely said yes, but I'm kind of bummed I never got the chance to. Please don't feel that way, Oliver. Making a commitment like that with you just to secure some vague domestic feeling would have been a terrible idea. It's not like that would have been the only reason. Because you still love me, right? Of course. And like I said, I've talked about all this stuff in depth. Heck, in general, for a lot of people out there, especially men, feel free to let me know in the comments if you agree with this. But I do feel like a lot of people feel like the best part about anime or video games is one of the best fantasies told in anime is someone actually cares about you. Heck, I didn't have my first kiss or my first girlfriend until I was already of the American drinking age. And, well, for the most part, all my experiences with women were terrible. Heck, even back when I was trying to ask women out and stuff, I probably got rejected by like 10,000 plus people, IRL not counting online dating. I've slept with 2 people total in my life, including my ex-wife. Every partner, every relationship I've ever had, I've been cheated on, and my marriage was absolutely horrible. Now, I'm still grateful I did get married, and there were still some happy memories in that marriage. I mean, when it's all said and done, I married that person because I loved them and because I trusted them, and I thought it would be someone I could feel safe around. I turned out to be wrong about everything, but hey, it is what it is. I got divorced, and I'll say this in general, I'm a lonely person, but I was never more lonely than when I was married. It was horrible living with my ex-wife. That being said, the happiest day of my life is still and will always be the day my son was born. I still say the happiest day of my life was the day my son was born. And granted, I'm estranged and alienated from him now. I hope that improves in the future, but I still love him. I'll always be there for him, regardless of how he feels about things. Whether he is the way he was when he was younger, be like, Daddy, and like, can I see Daddy more? Can Daddy come over tomorrow? Can Daddy come over next week? Or even the way things are now, where I'm just alienated from him and he seems to not even want to see or talk to me. Obviously, that makes me emotionally upset, but I care most about his well-being. That's what matters most to me. But I'll always be there for him. Whether he needs me or not, I'll always be there for him. And I always love him. And I always just want what's best for him. He's happy and safe and healthy where he is, and well taken care of. It still kind of upsets me. I wanted to be the one to take care of him. I wanted to raise my son. This wasn't the future I anticipated when I was holding him the day he was born. He lived with me till shortly after he was 3 years old. But, that's what happens when you get divorced. You lose your family. I don't miss my ex-wife at all. She's a complete psycho bitch. Heck, if we hadn't gotten divorced, I'd be dead. Heck, I still have a 3-inch scar on my right arm to remember my last Christmas being married to her by. But I've already talked about all this stuff in depth in other videos. But the most important thing is my son is happy and healthy and safe where he is, and well taken care of. I just want what's best for him. And at this point, given my physical and mental health has declined, I don't even know if I could take care of him anymore if he were to suddenly live with me. Not that that would ever even be an option in the first place. But at the end of the day is this. My experiences with women have been so fucking terrible. And in general, let's be clear, yes, there is no woman on the planet that would legitimately love or care about me. But even then, given the way my experiences have been, even if I had my choice of any woman on the planet, I'd say no to that now. It was awful. I mean, granted, I look at this situation here like a kind of happy, loving relationship between Violet and Oliver here. That's definitely something I wanted. I remember being a teenager, even being 13, watching some Tenchi Muyo and looking at people like, Mihoshi Kuramitsu and Ryoko and Washu and Ayeka and Kione and fantasizing about, having a wife and children and having a loving family. I watched a lot of those sitcoms when I was growing up, like family matters. I romanticized the idea of having a family, about having somebody like would be like my best friend, and we would have children together and have a happy family. And that never really worked out. Grandly, I understand I lack the things that most people like. I mean, especially since I'm kind of overweight now too. So it doesn't help that I'm fat. I'm 5'11" and I'm 206 pounds. I don't really have any muscle. My stomach sticks out more than it should. I tend to get sick a lot. I'm poor. I work at factories and I work a bunch of overtime, and I basically just make enough money to live from paycheck to paycheck. But I at least make a little extra here and there, enough to afford Steam video games to play. But hey, I at least make enough to not be homeless. Also, I've never been a very aggressive, outwardly assertive person. And I've had low self-esteem and been through about 100 different PTSD things over the course of the early part of my life. And like I said, I'm not rich, I'm not athletic, and I tend to be a very quiet, withdrawn person. And people usually will criticize me a lot, saying that my worst flaw is I'm just a very mellow, laid-back person. Also, apparently I'm a bit awkward. I've never been officially diagnosed as autistic or anything, but I would say in a large degree I am very much like Oliver here. Now, I know some people say the autistic thing is people being rude or something, but honestly I don't think I'm ever rude to anybody. If anything, I think I'm overly polite and courteous, and especially, I talk more in these Let's Plays than I have in my entire real life. In most of my life, I bottled up my feelings. I didn't talk to anyone. I know about 15 years ago I went through some bad stuff, and it made me really sad. And my reaction to that was just to talk to my friends. I talked their ears off. I know I probably annoyed them very, very badly. But yeah, my reaction was just to talk to people. Now, the closest thing I have to talking to people is this. But I've always enjoyed Let's Plays. I enjoyed watching people do Let's Plays. Like Ultra J Man and Freelance Astronauts. Almost felt like I was vicariously hanging out with them. Even back then, I was a very lonely person, and it made me feel less alone to be, sitting and watching the games and listening to other people play the game as if I was sitting there with them. I know this sounds making me sound like a loser, weeb, incel, whatever, but you know what? It's not inaccurate. By everyone's opinion, I'm worthless, I'm nobody. I'm an otaku, weeb, loser, failure, defective person, but oh well. But I suppose that is the biggest fantasy of video games or anime, that somebody would actually care about you. And I'll say this, Violet is very, very pretty. And I'll say this, the idea of myself eventually just being bisexual or gay as I got older would have been something that past me would have never seen or expected. I always considered myself 100% straight. Though I did enjoy the certain scenes from the anime Bible Black. But simplest answer is my experience as women and the way the society treats men have just been terrible. Besides, I've spent most of my life completely alone. And I'll say this, while I did marry my ex-wife because I loved her, which all the more made that betrayal and her becoming violent and just psycho hurt all the more, because it was somebody I thought I could feel safe around and someone I thought actually cared about me. And it turned out all that was a lie, and the person, honestly, at this point, I'd be fucking terrified if I saw her at any point. But like I said, I got a 3-inch scar on my right arm to remember my last Christmas being married to her by. Our son was 2.5 years old. He was playing with his presents. He was happy. She felt annoyed that he was making too much noise. So she started picking up his toys, breaking them in her hands. Screaming, cussing, yelling, taking his toys, slamming them in the wall, kicking some of his toys into the wall. And of course, a 2.5-year-old child seeing their mom do this, obviously is going to be a bit upsetting to him. I mean, heck, I was an adult even then, and I was flabbergasted at what was happening. And granted, she had, said and done things that were very bad before that. I mean, that wasn't the first time she did. Honestly, it wasn't even the 100th. But even then, the degree to which that, the situation, it was just, I felt like I was in shock at what was happening. Then again, I always had low self-esteem, always had the feeling that I have no reason why anyone would ever care about me. And then I have this person who I thought cared about me, then kept doing and saying very, very bad things after we were married. And I kept blaming myself for it. Even though she was the one doing bad things, even though she was the one yelling and saying very bad things and doing bad things, I kept blaming myself. Kept thinking maybe, I could just try harder. Almost like everything wrong in the world is my fault. Almost like every time anyone out there is mean to me or rude to me or treats me unfairly, it must somehow be my fault. And I just need to try harder and be harder on myself. To make up for it, to, air quotes, atone for whatever it is everyone in the world hates me for. Sometimes you think that maybe it'd be good if I could be something amazing. And that'd be the only way anyone could ever actually care about me. By the way, I kept blaming myself. Almost lying to myself, saying that things will get better. I had gone so much of my life expecting that no one would care about me at all, and then I had that little glimmer of hope of it, latched on to it, even though the circumstances upon having that glimmer of hope would have been seen as very unusual and to other people, and other people would consider me in the wrong in that situation. But at the same time, I've already explained that in depth. I've gone into really, really deep detail on that. So I've already explained that. And even then I can say this. Even though I married that person because I loved her, I can also say, without a shadow of doubt, even with hindsight, that had I not married her, I would have never had a wife ever. I would have never had a child ever. I would have never been able to have a family. And I desperately wanted that so much. And I'll say this in regard to my son, I wanted to do everything I could be the best dad in the whole world for him. I saw everything I didn't like about how I was raised. I was like, you know, I won't repeat those same mistakes, and I didn't. I did everything I could to be the most loving, caring father in the whole world. And I still love and care about him and always be there for him. But he doesn't live with me, and I don't really hardly ever get to see or talk to him. And at times I feel like he really wouldn't even care if I died. And that makes me sad. Especially since I remember so many memories where he was so happy to come over and see me. He missed me so much. Then the pandemic happened and all the government lockdowns from COVID, and I guess the whole COVID thing probably affected a lot of other people very similarly. And heck, a lot of men out there have been through divorces, been through far worse than me. I mean, there's so many stories I hear about men who have gone through relationships and divorces and families being broken up, that they went through situations that were 1,000 times worse than what I went through. And many of them wound up, taking themselves out of the equation from how bad those things were. So I guess I should be grateful that I was so, air quotes, lucky. Me and my son are still alive. But at the same time, how could I ever want to get married ever again, or in good conscience tell any man out there that it's a good idea to get married in, current year, if you're pretty much guaranteed that every marriage you get into is going to end in divorce, that your wife is going to be just a horrible, hateful, violent, abusive, psychotic, adulterous person, that you're going to know nothing but pain and hardship, that the other person you're with is not going to care about you, they're not going to respect you, they're not going to appreciate you, and you're going to forget what peace even is. Every day will feel like a battle. Every day you'll feel scared. You'll not be able to rest or have any amount of ability to wind down. You won't be able to sleep hardly or do anything you want to do. You'll be constantly yelled at and belittled and talked down to and insulted by the person you thought cared about you, who then it's clear doesn't care about you at all, and just seems to completely hate you. Heck, she even tried to kill me in my sleep a few times. And like I said, there was lots of really, really bad things that were said that were probably not very healthy for me to hear. That made me sad. I don't miss my ex-wife, but I miss the person I thought she was, the person I fell in love with, the person who never actually existed in the first place. But yeah, that Christmas he was just yelling and throwing his toys and everything, and then our son started walking towards her. And he was crying and upset. He's a 2.5-year-old kid, so of course he's... And, she got noticeably more angry about that. I then stepped in between them. Because at that point, I was just... If I hadn't stepped in between them, I don't know what would have happened. But I stepped in between them. And I told my wife to please stop. She then lunged at me, and then she stopped when she saw the blood coming out of my arm. Thankfully, it wasn't deep enough to need stitches. Physically, I can't say it really hurt. I mean, like I said, even though it's a permanent scar, it's not like I needed stitches. But It's the fact that who did it? It's kind of like sometimes I look back and think about certain things that my parents have said to me when I was younger, whether it was when I was 7 and 8 years old, or when I was a teenager, or even in my 20s. There are things they said to me that I know it's petty. I still hold a bit of a grudge that they said those things. And I'll say this. The only two people on the planet I really, really love are my son and my mother. No matter what, I'll always love my son, always be there for him. As for my mom, I know she's not perfect. She has lots of flaws, but I accept her for all her flaws, and I love my mom. And I wouldn't trade her for any other mom in the whole world. She's basically elderly at this point, and I don't want her to ever die, but I know eventually it's going to happen. She was about the age I am now when her mom died. And even then, it's a miracle that she's even alive in the first place. 15 years ago, my eldest sister died of a brain aneurysm. And 8 years ago, my mom had 3 strokes and an aneurysm. Luckily, it happened in public. When the first stroke happened, they started rushing her immediately to the hospital. And she had more strokes on the way. Had it not happened in public, she would be dead. I know it's a miracle that she's even alive at all. And actually made a full recovery after 4 months. But, and like I said, she has her issues. She definitely has some emotional instability of her own. And she definitely has some of her own psychological issues. But all that aside, I love my mom more than any other person on the whole planet. I love my mom very, very, very much. And whenever the time comes that she dies, I'll be very, very sad. I'll feel devastated. And I'll miss her very, very much. Like I said, she's not perfect and she's definitely got her flaws. And there's things from the past that I do feel upset with her about. Things that I feel that she was definitely in the wrong about. That were wrong for her to do or say. But at the same time, she is my mom. And I love her very, very much. I remember sitting playing the NES, the original Nintendo. I remember sitting and playing Mario 1 and Mario 3 with her. And neither of us were really very good at the game. But that didn't matter. I just enjoyed sitting and spending time with her. Sometimes we played little race cars and stuff like that. And of course, my mom would cook home-cooked meals back then. She really doesn't do that stuff anymore. It's just her and Dad living alone now. And I can't say I'm necessarily I hate Dad or anything. I appreciate, on the one hand, that he was there, in the house. And technically he's my stepdad, but I respect him more than my biological dad, But I have a lot of things that I've definitely been giving a lot more thought recently, and the more and more I think about it, I feel very angry and resentful toward my dad. Like I said, technically my stepdad, but I consider him my dad. And at the same time, it's just an issue of I do not trust him at all. And I feel very paranoid and very distrustful and angry and resentful toward him about certain things. But that's a very complicated story. Honestly, it's a really fucked up situation with that. But and granted, I've talked about it in some community posts and stuff, but even then, I'd say at best I only ever discussed, even if I mentioned everything that I've ever said in any video, or to anybody out there, or in any community post, all of that combined, is at best like 10% of the issues I have with him. I definitely feel angry and resentful about certain things. But can't say I hate anybody. And like I said, I don't want to go into all the reasons why I feel angry with him. Like I said, I've talked about it a bit in some videos and community posts and even to people online, and even then, even if I combined all of that, it's at best 10% of the reason. And even then, it's the more light-hearted version of it. But yeah, I don't really want to talk about that anymore. Main point is this: I love my mom. My mom would cook a lot of home-cooked meals, like lasagna and stuff like that, like from scratch. And I'd sit in the kitchen and talk to her while she's cooking. And, I got game consoles when I was younger, and I really enjoyed those. I had a Game Boy Color, a Sega Game Gear. Eventually I had a Sega Genesis. I got my PS1 as a hand-me-down from my older sister. And I bought my PS2 with money I saved working. Man. I really did enjoy playing a lot of video games. Especially, it's odd, I can't sit and play a really long RPG anymore. It's hard to stay focused on a game like that for too long. But at the same time, I remember playing Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 a dozen times through each, and doing 100 hours of level grinding in a lot of those games. Heck, I think I spent at least a solid 300 hours just on Dragon Quest VIII. So many really fun games. Gex Enter the Gecko, Jersey Devil, Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, Vector Man, Robo Warrior, A Dragon Spirit, Castlevania 2, Swords and Serpents, Sonic the Hedgehog, heck, Sonic Spinball, Sonic Shuffle, Sonic 3D Blast, Croc, Legend of Gobos. Heck, on that PlayStation 1, I remember playing Crash Bandicoot 2 and the original Spyro the Dragon with my mom. And again, I can't say either of us were really the greatest at those games, but I just enjoyed spending time with my mom. I would say largely most of my life I probably fantasized about the idea of having someone like Violet in my life. Albeit I would have wanted them to actually, value me enough to want to be with me forever and actually care about my thoughts and feelings. But, like I said, this whole breakup situation with Violet and Oliver I talked more about in the first time we came part this part of the game. But, yeah. And I don't blame my son for anything. In regards to the fact that, I don't want to ever be in a relationship with a woman again. I would rather just be gay or bisexual. Bishonen, femboys, futanari, go that route. Why? Because my experiences with women have just been really terrible. And in general, just the way society's been about it. In general, that situation fucking hurts too much. Beyond that, what's the point of marrying somebody if you're just going to be stuck in a legally binding contract with the government with someone who's, abusive and violent and aggressive and hates you? What's the point of being married to somebody if they're going to be adulterous and abusive and violent to you? And you're going to be legally stuck by a government contract to be with someone who's psychotic and insane. And yes, I have my own mental illnesses, but my mental illnesses are consisted of PTSD, low self-esteem. I'm pretty sure I'm autistic. And just generally being a very withdrawn, quiet individual who has very low self-esteem and talks to themselves. But, heck, I'm no threat to anybody in the world. Heck, the only person I'm threat to in the whole world is Dairy Queen. I like to go get ice cream. I like soft serve ice cream. Heck, I once went to a Godiva store. They don't know those exist anymore, like 2015. It was like a dark chocolate soft serve ice cream. It was so delicious. But yeah, the only person I'm a threat to is Dairy Queen. I like ice cream. It'd be cool if the Godiva store, granted it's a bit expensive, I'm not rich, but I like ice cream. Probably why I'm so fucking fat, I guess. To be fair, I think I was at least still about 180 till about the whole COVID pandemic time. But yeah, what's the point of marriage and a family if you're just going to have your children taken away from you? But yeah, I suppose that was a bit of a fantasy I had growing up. Someone like Violet. Someone who's cute and pretty, but also, someone who seems to actually like you for who you are as a person. Not because of anything extra or special about you, but because you're you. They like you because you're you. But I spent most of my life completely alone. I mean, heck, I definitely agree with that one statement Oliver made, where he was talking about Violet kissing him and he could feel her lips curl into a smile as she kissed him. That it was proof that someone could actually feel that way about you. And then it's just pretty much my whole life I've been just rejected and told I'm not wanted. And then every partner I did have, well, they made it clear when we broke up that they never actually found me attractive at all. And they explained their ulterior motives for even getting with me in the first place. I guess I should at least thank them for being honest about that stuff. But at the same time, it's just, I don't think I've ever met anyone in my entire life that actually has found me attractive. And I just keep getting older and fatter, so. But at the very least, I should be grateful I at least had any kind of relationships at all. And I'm glad I didn't know the truth of the situation, because at least then, I could at least think somebody cared about me. So even if they were lying to me, at least my feelings were real. Heck, like I said, I don't really know if I am autistic or not. And if I am, I at least had an high IQ when I was younger. I had like an IQ of like 132 when I was like 13. I graduated from high school with an honors diploma, straight A's, 4.0. Did calculus, physics, chemistry. I was an Eagle Scout in the Boy Scouts. And I worked since I was 14 years old. Heck, I did some jobs when I was technically 13, but I don't think you can really count stuff like doing a paper route or babysitting or chopping wood or just the jobs for people like cleaning out trailers and shit. But I was like 13 years old. But I've had actual jobs that could be taxed since I was like 14. Granted, you had to have like some sort of permit through the school or something to say that you're allowed to at that age. And of course, I was always bullied so fucking much in school. It eased off by the time 10th grade, but I've talked about that in community posts too, but heck, I was getting bullied since I was in kindergarten. People throwing fucking rocks at me and shit. And it wasn't just like, oh, there's 1-2 people kind of bullying me. It's that literally it felt like everybody in the entire school hated me, and it usually was like I had 100 people that actively bullied me, would throw shit at me, and I got used to the idea of like 5 people ganging up on me and beat the fucking shit out of me. Heck, I had a few people try to murder me a few times. So that was upsetting. Heck, I do remember this one time behind a convenience store. I was like 13 or something, and got the fucking shit kicked out of me for like a half hour plus behind this like convenience store. I probably got punched like a couple thousand times. It's like 5 fucking people. It is not pleasant getting thrown into a brick wall or getting your head stomped on. Or getting kicked and shit. Heck, I had a giant fucking bruise on my left temple. Maybe it was the right. I don't know. I think it was left. It's purple and shit, and it stuck out a couple inches. Eventually, though, everyone sort of eased off around the time that you're like 10th grade. So, like, around the time you're like 16 years old, 17, going on 17, it basically eased off. And one would think in another life maybe I would have become like a scientist or something. Like doing like chemistry stuff. Maybe like experimenting with like biological formulas and stuff, like peptides and all that kind of shit. Not that I know anything about that stuff anymore, because I, haven't really read anything on that stuff in such a long time. Instead, I'm just somebody who's been working in factories his whole life. I've been working manual labor my whole life. Heck, most of my life has been spent wearing steel-toe boots, working on concrete. And I feel like in the long run, I'm not going to be able to last. At least my current job's better than my previous one. The previous one I had to quit because I was going to die of a heart attack. And my knees were giving out from the awkward turns I was having to do. Was putting too much torque on the tendons on the inside of my knees. But yeah, my chest was always hurting. I was going to have a heart attack if I didn't quit that job. And of course, right now, with the way certain things are, I'm worried about my financial future. But if I work enough overtime, and at least any of the games I get on Steam, I usually just get them when they're on sale, and even then I'll probably be, dialing that down quite a bit. But I really can't complain. I have a place to live, I have food. And I have these really cool games. I really enjoy these games. Like I said, I don't know if I should ever bother going to a doctor to get officially diagnosed autism and shit. What would it even matter at this point? How old I am. But yeah, in the future, I'm just gonna be gay. Because at least that way I feel that's the only way that I'd have a partner who actually cares about me as a person, who actually sees me as a human being, who's actually kind to me, who actually respects me. I know that probably sounds a bit lame to people, that you just want someone who actually cares about you. Someone that you could be around and feel safe around. That under no circumstance would that person ever try to hurt you. It sounds like such a weeb, loser, pathetic thing to say. How can I be any more lame than saying I just want someone to care about me? That I just want someone I could feel safe around. Someone I can trust. Someone who's kind to me. Someone who respects me. Someone who actually appreciates that I exist and doesn't take me for granted and actually sees me as, precious. Then again, I've gotten so used to the idea of everyone just sees me as worthless. Everyone hates me. Heck, maybe not. Maybe the ultimate fantasy isn't having somebody who cares about you. Maybe the ultimate unattainable fantasy is just that there's somebody who doesn't hate you. Somebody who accepts you for everything you are and doesn't think less of you as a person. And would consider, losing you or you getting hurt to be one of the most painful things in the world. Someone who actually cares about you and actually wants you to be happy. Such a stupid thing to want. Someone I feel safe with. Someone who I think respects me, cares about me. Someone who under no circumstance would ever try to hurt me. Oh well, I've talked enough about stuff no one would care about anyway. Wasn't So Alex Trebek, I'd like to take phrases no one in the world would ever say to me for 500. Sorry about the long pause. It's just, I was, especially after that little fucking diatribe tangent I went on, I was not expecting a line like that. No, honestly, that's probably the thing I was thinking about even back when I was like very young teenager watching Tenchi Muyo, having romanticized thoughts about a loving relationship. Probably the idea of someone saying this exact sort of line to me. You're my favorite person on the entire planet. I love you dearly. Yep, that pretty much sums up entirely what I wanted in my youth. And honestly, I would say that that phrase is still something I actually long for and like. Except now I think more of it like, Astolfo or Sylvia from Konosuba. It's not an issue. Like, I don't hate women or anything. It's just, given my experiences, it's like, can't really view a relationship with somebody with a vagina as anything other than a mouse looking at a mousetrap after, you know, seeing other mice literally get killed. So again, it's not an issue of, oh, I don't hate women. I don't want to take away anyone's rights. I'm still egalitarian and stuff and think everyone should have the right to vote and everything. It's more so along the lines of, I can't be attracted to someone I don't feel safe with. And most of all, I care most about a person's personality. And obviously, people say, oh, how'd you end up with the people you ended up with then? Very low self-esteem, and the fact that for the most part they initiated, and I was really overjoyed at the idea of somebody liking me. Also, with came to my wife, I was literally, when she confessed to me, I was literally had just been hit by a truck. I couldn't move my left arm, and it was on Vicodin in my bed, and I had a dozen plus staples across the left side of my skull. It would take me about a full minute to go from laying down to just sitting up. And heck, from my waist to my toes, my whole legs were covered in purple and black bruises that felt like the texture of a basketball, and all my ribs were as bruised as possible without actually being broken. I still think it was funny when I looked at my car at the junkyard. I was like, what kind of fucking dumbass designs an airbag? I'm looking at this red and white airbag, and there was more red on the airbag than there was white. And I was like, what? The kind of stupid person designs a fucking airbag? What's next? You're gonna put the American fucking flag on it? And it took me a moment for it to click that it wasn't designed. It was an all-white airbag. The red that was covering all of it was my blood. It's just, I had basically been all alone all my life, and everybody who had ever said they cared about me betrayed me and abandoned me. I'd gotten to the point of accepting that I was just going to die alone. And then I got hit by a fucking truck. Basically almost got izakai'd by fucking truck coon. And then I had someone tell me they were glad I wasn't dead, and that they loved me, and they wanted to marry me and eventually have my kids. Obviously, looking back, lots of red flags. But I'll say this, while I did marry that person because I really did love them, I can also say, looking back, even now, had I not married them, I would have never had a wife. I would have never had a family. I would have never had children. The day my son was born was the happiest day of my life. And like I said, even if the partners I've had lied to me, at least the feelings I had were true. At least I believed the person cared about me. But yeah, I can say that even since I was 9 years old, I was thinking about a future of having a partner like this. Most important thing of all was someone I'd feel safe with. Someone who'd respect me, someone who would actually know who I am as a person, where they knew who I am as a person in terms of my personality and how I think and feel about things, and for them to love and accept me as I am. For someone who would wholeheartedly and sincerely say this sort of phrase to me. And definitely would help if they were as cute and pretty as Violet is. But, yeah. You're my favorite person on the entire planet. I love you dearly. But try to understand. I wasn't even thinking about love in the moment. My only thought was securing this new amazing lifestyle forever. I was completely consumed by that idea. It wasn't even about being in love with you. It wasn't even about you, really. It was about security. I only wanted to be comfortable, to feed the thing that was feeding on me. Even knowing all that, I still would have said yes. I know, that's the problem. Problem? Vi, the love we have is still here. That's the only thing that really matters. Context matters, Oliver. It's dangerous to always take what's been handed you without even questioning it. Nothing given out for free is ever just a gift, after all, especially not a relationship. You're just excited that something like that was even on the table in the first place. I still think you would have been a great wife. Who knows? Maybe I'll bring Rain back into your life after all this nonsense, and we'll somehow end up getting hitched. Maybe we're meant to be together. Maybe that's the reason why all this stuff feels so weird and predetermined, is because of fate. In regard to what's being mentioned right here, I've already talked about in depth. Technically a different conversation than the one I just had. It was on a different topic, but I feel it's still relevant. I mean, obviously it's about the topic. It was about how if you love somebody, you wouldn't want to break up and have them be with other people and you be with other people and then come back together. You would just want to stay together with that person. But it's more likely not that fate is just our dumb unconscious thoughts dragging us along. You don't need a wife, Oliver. And I don't need a husband. At least not right now. Of course you'd think that. What? That you don't need a wife? No. That fate doesn't exist. Come on now. Where's your sense of romance? Romance isn't worth dying for. Romeo and Juliet were fictional, hormonal idiots. At least Shakespeare lived past 18 and knew his shit. Which of the two would you rather look up to, Oliver? Hey, Violet. You do a lot of lucid dreaming, right? Yes, indeedy. So that means you have pretty strong control over your dreams, correct? That's essentially true. It's not perfect control, but it's close enough. How come? I was just wondering if it's possible for you to still have nightmares then. It's funny you would bring that up. Avoiding nightmares is actually the exact reason I started learning how to lucid dream. No kidding. I had a pretty traumatizing one back when I was 16. It went on for what felt like months. It was so long and miserable that I decided I never wanted to lose control of my dreams ever again. So I did some research, found out about lucid dreaming, and now every dream I have is like my own little cognitive playground. And now there's essentially zero risk of being trapped in my headspace. It's great. Wait, it felt like it went on for months. This might be pretty insensitive to ask, so you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. But what were your nightmares about? Oh, don't worry. I don't mind talking about it. I've been lucid dreaming for so long that I'm basically over it now. Essentially, the dream was about me walking through these all weird yellow rooms. I could tell it was in a building of some sort, but nothing about the building made any sense. Back rooms. It's the back rooms. Because no matter how long I walked, I would never find any doors or windows. It was just the same yellow room repeating itself over and over again like a maze. It's the word maze specifically that triggers it in me. A primal fear that spins inside my guts like millipedes. And the entire time it smelled like moldy carpet. And the entire time I was walking, the whole place smelled like moldy carpet. It smelled like moldy carpet, right? The color drains from Violet's face. Yes. That's exactly what it smelled like. And there was annoying fluorescent lights on the ceiling that wouldn't stop buzzing. And you couldn't even break any of them because there wasn't any furniture in the rooms, right? Oliver? How the hell do you know about that? Because I'm pretty sure I had the exact same dream when I was a kid. No way. Are you sure I didn't tell you about this back at school or something, and you're just now remembering it? I'm absolutely certain. So how did you end up getting out? How did you wake up? I found this wall that was a little less yellow than some of the others, and I ended up falling through it somehow. How about you? I don't even know. The last thing I remember were all these hallways, like the one you see in a hotel. The end of one of the hallways was some kind of staircase. I don't even know what happened after that. We should probably stop talking about this now. I agree. I love you, Violet. I love you too, Oliver. I'm glad you made it out. I feel like no matter what I do today, I'm going to leave this town unsatisfied. That's probably true, unfortunately. We made a pretty big mess of this place, haven't we, Violet? I don't know how to fix any of this. Even if I did, I don't think there's enough time for me to put whatever weird idea we'd come up with into action. What are we supposed to do, Violet? What can we do? Violet, normally prepared for basically anything I throw at her, stalls for a bit. We spent so much time talking in the speech, filling the air with our meaningless words. But in this moment, when I want an answer from her most, Violet is completely silent. You don't know, do you? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but we're in the same cognitive boat here. I'm just as lost as you are. Why is it that being lost feels like such a sin? It's not that we were ever taught to do in these situations. We were taught about parallelograms, the Civil War, mitochondria. Of course we get lost in a sea like this. We were never properly equipped to handle something like this in the first place. I think the very first part I did of this game was like 6+ hours, and I went to about this part. I titled it, "There is no sin in feeling lost." This video is a bit long itself, but it's at least not as nearly as long as that video. We were never gifted strong wills or healthy brains. All we have is some awful experiences and the anemic philosophies that come bundled with them. Other people's ideas, that's all we have, a paper boat melting on the skin of the very real sea. And none of that is powerful enough to save a life. I don't know where to go from here. I'm just painting on this beach until things start making sense again. The beach, our own personal Ojichia, the terminus of this journey together. Another borrowed concept for us to cling to, another paper boat. Sorry, but that's all I got left, Oliver. That's all I have left to give you. It's all I've got. I'm completely stunned. It isn't long, however, before the stunned feeling folds into a deep and visceral shame. I was hoping she'd have some idea what to do next. In fact, I was completely expecting it. I almost always depend on her to start our conversations, hungry for her to teach me something new. But that dependency, that hungry feeling I have, is completely parasitic, isn't it? I say my next words without thinking. Well, that's a big relief. Huh? Yeah. I feel like much less of a failure if you're just as lost as I am. You're incredible, Violet. I've learned so much just by talking with you. So if someone as amazing as you doesn't know how to fix any of this, then I'm certain feeling lost is completely normal. And if being lost is normal, then I shouldn't feel too beat up about not knowing what to do, right? Violet starts giggling to herself. So we just have to be okay with having done something so horrible, is that it? I mean, no, but we'll figure it out. And if we can't, then it's up to us to find a way to be okay with that, I guess. This sounds like Black Sabbath. I can't think of what song it is, but person who composed this music. I'm not saying you copied Black Sabbath, but I'm saying you probably felt very inspired by them, and if not, again, this is a compliment. This is really good music. But this sounds like Black Sabbath. Particularly that riff right there. Oh, but I can't remember which one. But this sounds like Black Sabbath. That smile I love so much somehow finds its way. That smile I love so much somehow finds its way back to Violet's face. I know this is off topic, guys, but I do like the idea of like walking on bike trails and hiking trails. I would never want to go camping again, but I like walking. It's probably why I did that Lucidity playlist. But I think I'd probably be okay with walking on beaches too. It's just there are no beaches around here. Beaches don't exist. Then again, I don't live in Florida. But I have told you guys a story about how when I was like 10 years old, or 11, maybe 11, my mom was going to go to Florida, and me and her were going to go live in Florida. But she turned around midway through Kentucky. But yeah, the story of how Lunar D8, Ohio man, almost became Florida man. I do imagine, while I don't know how I'd feel with the ocean, because I feel like I'd have a little bit of fear of the ocean. I mean, it's so big and so deep, and there's a lot of fish in there. Also, I haven't gone swimming in like a decade. At one point, I was actually trained on being a lifeguard, but I imagine if I did live in Florida, I'd probably go to the beach a lot and just watch the ocean. I'd probably watch the trees sway in the wind. I know it sounds lame. I know it is lame of me, but I like sitting and watching the storms. Sometimes there's thunderstorms here in Ohio, and I'll sit on my front porch, drink some Pepsi or something, and I'll just watch the rain. It's nice to just listen to it. Heck, if I actually did live at a place close to where space shuttles launched, I would totally watch those things launch into the air, and I don't think I'd ever get tired of it. Heck, I'd be the kind of person go outside and I'd probably try to watch a hurricane. And people are like, you need to evacuate. I'm like, I want to watch this. I'd be like sitting on the beach in a fucking metal folding chair, drinking a Pepsi, watching the hurricane approach. I know. It's really lame of me. But that's just who I am. I'm the kind of guy who likes... I like the scenery and backgrounds of Spyro the Dragon. Like the environments of that game. Like, just imagine walking around in like a VR version of Spyro the Dragon. And imagine if you had friends there you could talk to. Whoa, what? I clicked on I was trying to click here. Good answer, Olive. Alright then. If you're serious about leaving this hellhole satisfied, you probably should go and get on that. You're feeling refreshed. Do you feel like you've talked enough yet? Not at all. I really feel like so many games I've played, I play as myself. I feel like Oliver in this situation. Hell, he looks like I did back when I was 18 years old. But yeah. He definitely talks and acts like I do. And while I don't want to be rude in regard to my parents, I definitely saw some parallels in Sunflower Pie in regard to the way Oliver is with his parents. Then again, I lived with my parents for a few years after graduating high school. Granted, I worked full-time, and I paid tithes and offering, and I went to church, and I did chores around the house, and I paid for any bills I personally had, like car and stuff, and phone. I paid for the internet, and I paid for anything I personally wanted, like video games or anime. Heck, I would say almost all the anime and video games I have, even the old stuff I have from the past, the stuff I bought with money I made from working. In addition to that, I paid rent. So I was paying rent. Heck, sometimes I look back at that, and I feel that if I hadn't stayed with my parents, they probably wouldn't have been able to afford to keep paying the rent themselves back then. but I really didn't see a reason to go anywhere. I mean, there was nowhere out there in the world that actually would have wanted or cared about me. There were no apartments available. And I had a lot of other situations going on that just sort of, well, fucked me over in life. Made it where leaving just wasn't an option. I had a dog. I couldn't take her with me when I moved out. She died about a couple years after. Moved out of old age at 10 years old. I suppose I really would be this kind of a lame person that, Violet's like, oh, you feel like we've talked enough? And you're like, nope, not at all. You're feeling refreshed. You feel like we've talked enough yet? No, not at all. I'd probably be really annoying. That's funny. This is probably the kind of person, again, she's very pretty and I would have liked that too, but this is probably the person I would have really liked when I was back this age. Hell, it really is weird. Oliver looks like I did back when I was 18. And he acts and talks like I do too. And this is the kind of person I would have wanted. Someone who would have talked to me this much. And at the end of the day, when that person then asks me, do you feel like we've talked enough? I'll be like, no, not at all. I would have wanted to keep talking. Heck, I would say there would have been nobody like that at all to be interested in me, but honestly, I know for a fact there wasn't. There was nobody out there. But even if there had been anybody even remotely like this interested in me, I would have annoyed the hell out of them as much as I would have wanted to talk to them all the time. That's funny. I've talked to stuffed animals since I was as young as I can remember. I walk on bike trails and I'll talk to myself. Or pretend I'm talking to someone from the Bible, or an anime character or a video game character. Hell, when I got divorced, I spent, for the first 5 years, I spent a couple hours a day sitting in my son's room talking to his stuffed animals. I felt really devastated, and I missed my son so much. I still miss him, but I at least only spend 15 minutes a day in there now. So that's better. It was silly. I'd sit in his bedroom and read his books. I'd read his books to his stuffed animals. I mean, I still feel upset over losing my family. But I've at least learned to deal with it. But in general, I guess the main thing I'm saying about this is I'm the kind of person who likes the idea of being able to talk to people. Now I'll say this, in all my videos, I've talked more in these Let's Plays than I have in my entire real life. That's okay. It doesn't need to be all perfect. It doesn't need to all be perfect, right? Good luck out there, Olive Oil. Do what you need to do. Violet stands me up, spins me around and kicks my butt with the side of her foot. Even if I don't feel perfect, I leave the beach feeling a little bit more at peace with what's to come. That's right, I can do this. I know I can do this. Journal page 48. Villains. The six of us are almost all done with Violet's work. Thankfully, her teachers haven't noticed anything yet, so I guess my coaching paid off after all. Even if they did notice, it wouldn't matter. I won't let it matter. We spent most of the day just laying in bed. It's kind of amazing that this is just going to be our life once we're actual roommates. Maybe my fear of mundanity was an irrational one after all, because I could easily do this forever. I wish I knew how to write a poem for her, though, but there's too much about each other we seem to understand. There aren't any obvious blank spots for my writing to fill. There is only the long black line of our future, stretching out into infinity. There is only the highway that takes us up to Asheville. But that's fine by me. For once in my life, things make sense all on their own. And only a villain would try to take that away from me. Just double checking.